Welcome to the Finance Geeks, a podcast about real financial planning. Join us as we get into the nitty-gritty, discussing everything from pensions to portfolios. If you're into numbers, strategies, and running a successful practice, this is your ultimate geeky hangout.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 16 of the Finance Geeks podcast. Thanks for joining us. My name is Warren Shute, and I'm here joined by
Paul Cleworth.
And today we're talking about the top 10 mistakes to avoid as a financial planner. But before we do that, Paul, what have you been up to?
I've been karting and caravanning again with my son. We've just had round 3 in Northwest Wales at Gleneagles, so that was fun. We had amazing weather. I've been playing golf with Kevin. I've been doing a bit of that, and average golf. We played at Redbourne, which we like because it's got some hills and it's a really nice course, nice greens. But we're both, bogey golfers. And
you're being generous.
Yes, well, I'm an average golfer. I'm a less than average golfer, thank you. Below average, subpar golfer. I've also bought a Clydo clock.
I didn't know you were going to say that live.
Yeah. I'm really proud of it. I could show you. It's a bit tricky to do it, but it's sort of there. Can you see that?
Oh yeah, nice.
That's the clock. Yeah,
nice.
So I've put a link in the show notes if anybody wants to be bothered as to go and have a look. But a little gizmo for my desk, and it tells the time and everything. Hence the word clock. Warren, what have you been up to?
Oh, playing a lot of golf, which has been good. Absolutely loving it. Very fortunate to play Sunningdale last week, which was awesome. Very good. Looking forward to that. And if there are any financial planners listening, a lot of financial planners are going up to Scotland to play Gleneagles next week. So I don't know if this will be out in time for them to do that. But if you're not down, put your name down on the list. Or get
Do they have big bunkers there at Gleneagles?
So I've never played Gleneagles. It's the King's course at Gleneagles. Never played it. Sunningdale wasn't as difficult as I thought. So I'm an average golfer. If I was a bogey golfer, I'd be quite pleased. And I was expecting Sunningdale to be really difficult. And it wasn't. It was really enjoyable. It's a gorgeous course. It was a real boys trip. It's like, it was good fun. Real good fun.
Okay. Very good.
I'm looking forward to Scotland as well. And this weather we're having is fantastic, isn't it? It's just making the most of it.
It is. I asked about the bunkers because I was going to say that the line from Happy Gilmore to you, he spends more time on the sand than David Hasselhoff. Yes, that's what he says to Shooter McGovern. Anyway, you spend more time looking for your ball in the woods than the squirrels, don't you? Hey?
That is actually really appropriate. Yes, I do. Yeah, I do.
How many balls do you go through when you play golf? Exactly.
No, I'm pretty good. Only maybe 2, something like that, 2 or 3. I'm pretty good. Do you know what I liked about the group is a syndicate? And they were so nice. The guys were so kind. Whenever the ball was in the rough, everyone went to look for it. I don't know about you. Actually, I do know about you. When I play with you, I'm like, where's Paul? Paul, where are you?
And you were like Odd Job from Goldfinger, where he drops it out of the bottom of his trousers, right near the hole. That's what you do, isn't it? You put one down your trousers and it drops out. Aha! Yeah, that's what you have to say.
Right, before you embarrass me anymore,
come on, let's get on with it.
Let's move on to the main focal point today. The 10 top mistakes to avoid as a financial planner. So, where do you want to start, Paul?
So, I've got a list, as usual, and I suggest that we go through it and we'll see which ones that we think fit. But, so number one, this is with all of our experience, I suppose. Number one, trying to be everything to everyone. And this is to do with taking on clients who, ask you to be their advisor, regardless of whether they're a good fit or not. And it's if you're not selective, it can ultimately lead to poor outcomes, I think, for yourself and for the client. What do you think?
100%. I think it's difficult in the early days. You think you're a new financial advisor, you're trying to get traction. You're trying to get business. So someone, is keen or pays interest, you kind of like pursue, and you might accept something that you wouldn't ordinarily do. I was guilty of this in the early days. I worked a lot with accountants, and they would test you out. They'd give you their small cases to sort of work and how'd you get on with this before they gave you access to their bigger clients. But you're absolutely right. Paul Etheridge had an expression, don't take on tomorrow's problems today. And I think it's really important to make sure that you know what you do. But for me, this doesn't mean niching. I know the whole profession goes on about niching. I'm not an advocate of niching. I don't agree with it. So I don't think you say, okay, I'm only going to deal with 50-year-old male doctors who live in this postcode. For me, that doesn't work. but it's really like, what are you good at? What aren't you good at? And just deliver what your service is.
Yeah, well, I agree. And 24 years in the business, or nearly 25 this year, I've definitely taken on clients in the past that weren't ideal, if you like, in terms of where we are now. And a lot of it's defined or in the industry, if you like, by the amount of assets that a client has. And I've always said, that the number one criteria is there a good fit? Do I like them? Do they like me? Are they going to be fun to work with? But the trying to be everything to everyone also relates to being a jack of all trades. And you just talked then about niching in terms of clients. So I work with barristers or doctors or business owners. If you try to do too much, you just it's definitely a recipe for disaster. If you try to be an expert in all areas, you just can't be that.
Yeah.
So better off saying, actually, I specialize in financial planning or retirement planning, or I'm much more of a generalist. And do what you're good at. For example, I don't do mortgages or wills. We outsource those.
Yeah.
So have we talked enough about that one point?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a case of, what are you good at? What do you like doing? Deliver that. And if someone doesn't fit your mold, then just say, hey, you're not really a right fit. Give Tandem a call. They might be able to help you.
I refer all the ones that don't fit onto you. It's all those dodgy phone
my phone
calls
was
that you
busy
get.
these days. I thought my phone was getting busy.
Right, number 2.
Yeah.
Do you want to read this one out?
Presuming or assuming without proper discovery. I think this is really, really, really appropriate. When I speak to my guys, one of the things I sort of say to them is, don't decide for the client. Let the client decide. Give the client the information, the facts, the knowledge. And you'll find that most people you deal with are bright people. They can make decisions when given the information. Now, if they need a solid recommendation or guidance, then that's what you're there for. But don't decide for them. The biggest one for me is financial advisors say, oh, the client wouldn't want to pay that. They wouldn't want to pay that much money for protection. They wouldn't want to put 10 grand a month away into their pension. They wouldn't want to do this because it's too much for me as the advisor. I'm portraying, overlaying my beliefs on the client. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I think that it comes down to your process initially and your fact-finding process. You can rush initially. And I know that I'm guilty of this, thinking, right, I'm quite experienced, had hundreds and hundreds of meetings. Give me the fact find, and based on that alone, I'll give you the best advice. Whereas, of course, you've got to realize a lot of fact finds are incomplete. The clients don't tell you the whole story. They don't open up unless you ask them great questions and give them the opportunity in the right setting for them to really open up and understand what it is that you do and what it is that they're looking for. There's another one, like the assumption that everybody should just be 100% equities. There's an assumption of a lot of advisors in our profession that's their first one. Oh, risk profile. You don't want to do a risk profile questionnaire. It's another story, but the point is that from the client's existing fact find and position, you can't just assume what their risk profile is without discussing it with them.
Yeah, 100%.
and understand, helping them understand, the difference between bonds and equities and their time scale and their health and their preference for volatility or not, what return they're looking for. What happens when you assume?
Yes.
You make an... Yes.
That of you and me.
You and me. Very good. Yes. So proper discovery questions and a meeting required.
I'll tell you a good one on that is about assumptions is when I was mainly dealing with accumulators, I would calculate how much pension they wanted and just say, well, look, that's the monthly premium you've got to pay. And often they'd fall off their chair and say, well, I can't afford that. That's what I earn a month. You say, okay, well, look, let's start on a lower amount. And Presswood, Truth, has a fantastic calculation in it that allows you to index the premiums. You say, okay, well, look, this is the end result I want. This is what I can afford. How much does it have to escalate by? And you can work with the client to get a solution. But don't decide for the client, oh, they're not going to be able to afford that. They won't pay that. I've been surprised so many times.
Yeah, it could be, it can lead to a poor outcome because you've, based on your own impression of the client and your own thoughts about money and premiums and affordability, you've decided for the client what you think they can do and what they think they can afford and made the decision for them. And it's interesting what you said then about the projections. If you get to see a new client, they're in their mid 40s or 50s, and you have this whole discussion, what they're on, what they want to achieve in the future, you're better off saying, okay, I understand what you've said. You want to earn, $5,000 a month at age 60 in today's terms. This is what you need to do to achieve that based on these assumptions. and then leave it there. Let it hang in the room a little bit. Because if the client says, "Oh, right, okay, I'll do it. I need to pay $2,000 a month," and you've just beforehand, you could have said, "Oh, we'll just do 500 a month into the ISA, shall we?"
And I don't think it's a point on our list, but that's a really valid point you raise there. Allow it to sit there. You've got to understand, sometimes you're telling these people the bit of information the first time they've heard it. If you've told them that, you might have heard it 100 times before, but they've got to digest it. And sometimes it takes a bit of time to process, like,
It's the use of the pause, isn't it? It's really hard when you're on a roll and you're trying to educate the client and talk at them and impress them and all of that, and just to go slower and pause and just wait for them to answer. It's a skill I'm still trying to master, to be honest.
I didn't say anything.
The look then that you just gave me said it all, to be honest. And I know my shortcomings, and that's one of them,
Okay.
Right. Number 3, I'll read this one out. Number 3, as a top 10 mistake, is letting clients dictate the advice. So this is where you become an order taker, insistent clients. They say, "This is how I want to invest my money," and then just do what they say.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think that's a recipe for disaster running a financial planning practice. What do you think?
I think, do you know what, alarm bells should be rung in the first early meetings when the client's telling you what they want to do and stuff. It's a different thing to say, you ask the client, what are your views? What's your outcome? What was you expecting to do? What was your sort of plans? But you need to be a professional and deliver the advice that's appropriate for the client after ascertaining their fact find, getting their basic information, making assumptions, developing the plan, and then delivering your advice. If you've got a client, we've not engaged several clients over the years who've said, "Okay, no, this is what I want. I want this, and this is how I want to do it." And if it's not something I'm congruent with, then I'm not going to deliver it. I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry.
I've had a few conversations recently with clients where they've requested to draw down a certain amount of money or from their pot, and we show them the figures, and it shows that it's unsustainable, and they're going to run out of money. And it's a tricky one because you've got a client insisting. You need to have an insistent client policy. But what I'm very clear to do is I always remember that I've got my job's to give best advice. So I would write, "Actually, I don't agree with that, and these are the reasons. This is against my advice." I had an interesting case with a client of mine who was going to buy a car recently for a lot, like £70,000. And we went through the numbers, and I thought about it. And then I sent him an email, and then I followed it with a call. And I said, "Look, I don't think you should do it for these reasons." And I'm really pleased. He emailed me today, and he said, "Thanks for that. I didn't really need it. And, I'm going to now focus on building up the pot of money in my business and personally." And it's that little tweak. That's where the real advice is.
Yeah.
When you're helping the client make a really good decision. Just because you can buy something doesn't mean you should.
No.
It's not always the best thing. Just, I'll buy it anyway, just because I can.
Yeah.
No. So you've got to tell clients what they need to hear.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Making sure your advice is clear, you've got structure behind it, and there's a reason why you're recommending things.
Yeah, absolutely. And sticking to your gut, if you're an advisor with principles, there's no point bending to the client's will when they say, "Oh, actually, this is what I want." And they come to you with a list of demands and requirements. And the thing is, you've got to not be defensive about it, but you still have to give them an opinion and be very calm and say, "Well, that's fine. I understand. You only want to do £500,000 of life insurance. Okay, I'm recommending £1 million. I'm not going to change my opinion on how much I think you should have.
No.
It's still my opinion, but I will proceed with what you want. But I need to document it that it's against my advice."
Yeah, that's a really important point. You give the recommendation, and the client chooses what they want. You need £1 million worth of cover. Okay, I'm not willing to pay that. I'm going to pay for 500. That's fine. That's what you want. Yeah. You know what you need. Okay,
Yeah.
Number 4.
Number 4.
Overcomplicating your service and portfolios. It kind of ties in with the other piece a little bit, I think. Trying to impress, trying to think that there is a silver lining, something unique, that if you make things a little bit more complicated. For me, and this might be a bit controversial, but it comes into the line of structured products, VCTs, EISs, that kind of thing, BPR schemes, just trying to be a bit too clever with what you do.
Yeah, you're completely. I mean, when we think about investing and we see client portfolios, existing clients, you take them on and you see some where it's just overly complicated to the extreme. I mean, one of the best examples I can recall is with a certain, fund wealth manager that have thousands and thousands of partners in the UK. And I saw this client's portfolio, and it was about 12 different policy numbers, so 12 different pensions, all with the same provider. And I just didn't understand why they didn't amalgamate them all together. And then when you see the underlying assets and investments, I remember seeing some others where, as example, with Barclays, one of my clients had a portfolio with them. It had over 100 individual assets. It had, direct unit trusts and OICs, collectives. It then had direct shares, direct gilts, commodities, gold, oil. It has just a bit of everything. Yeah. And you just don't need to overcomplicate it. So that's the portfolios. You touched on the service there. As soon as you start, trying to do everything, and the client says, "Can you help me with this?" The best advice I can give an advisor here is just be willing to say no. Yeah. Just say, okay, and I understand what you're saying. You want to do these products, these VCTs, these EISs, or whatever it is they want to do. I want to buy crypto. And you've got to say to them, if you want to go and do that, you can do it directly, but I'm not going to do it for you in the nicest of ways, because it's not part of your core service offering. Yeah. And you end up then spending your time either learning about it or not doing it very well. Yeah. And if you don't do something often, you're not going to do it very well. You'll do half a job.
And what you'll find is they will then generalize in their thoughts. So, okay, you messed this up. I wonder if you didn't do a very good job with the general planning. And then they generalize you as not doing very well. So where you're thinking you're helping them, I'm going to go out my way. I'm going to help and arrange this BPR scheme or whatever it might be. And it doesn't go according to plan. You then lose the other business, which you are actually doing quite well. Peter Lynch, the Fidelity fund manager, had a great expression of diversifying.
Diversifying, very good.
So you basically, just overly complicate your portfolio, just putting things in there that maybe are so correlated that arguably there's no benefit of holding the two asset classes together. And you're right. I come across private banks can be good at this, just having layers and layers and layers of funds and directs, and it just doesn't make sense.
They're trying to demonstrate their knowledge, and they're trying to sort of justify their fees. I mean, it's those two things. And when you realize that, and this all comes on to the next point as well, that I think the client's really paying you for clarity of thought. They want an opinion. And it's not as if I'm going to say to them that my opinion is the only one and everything else is no good.
Don't you say that to them? I thought that was normal for a planner.
That's exactly. You're right. They should just do as I say. That's the ideal outcome for a client, isn't it? Just do as I say. That'd be brilliant. No, but if this comes to again sticking to your guns and having absolute integrity. If there's a product that I don't understand, or I've not come across, or I'm not a specialist in, I will say to them, it's not something that I do, and I would just leave it at that and saying, I'm sorry, I can't help with that. I mean, take an example, private medical insurance I used to do for clients. Yeah. And we used to use Aviva and Bupa and one or two other providers, maybe AXA. It turns out, there's about 12 to 15 providers. It is quite complicated, quite niche. And I decided, right, I'm not going to do this now because it's taken up so much of my time to try and understand the products and sell it properly and advise on it properly. So I found an introducer that specializes in this, and now I outsource it to him. Oh. And I'd rather give the client that advice to say, look, I found this person who's a specialist in this area. I'll help you put this policy in place that you want. But I'm not going to personally do it for you because it's not what I'm best at.
That's cool. Number 5?
Yes. So number 5, and again, this ties into some of the things we've said, neglecting your own education or pretending that you know it all. I mean, if you are, I think a lot of clients can just tell from the way you say something, whether you're proficient in that topic, whether you're confident, whether you know what you're talking about. It comes across in your body language. If you act as if and you pretend, like in the films Boiler Room and Wall Street and all of that, and you're just making it up as you're going along, it is again a recipe for disaster. So I think there's no harm in being humble and sticking to what you know and developing the things that you know well. So if you're a financial planner and you like cash flow management and projections and you like helping the client, then get better at that. Look at the alternatives out there, understand it better, develop the knowledge. Don't just sit on your laurels and say, this is it, I can just stick with this. I know I'm looking at new financial planning software at the moment. I'm also going to be reaching out and doing the research to speak to some specialist consultant firms that can help me with my proposition, to do a rain check on it and say, is it good? Can I improve on this? And then documenting it. And then when you say that the clients, what are they paying for? A lot of it is your ongoing ideas, your CPD, because things change so quickly in our industry, don't they? And rules change, tax rules change, products change. You've got to be one step ahead all the time. The outcome might be similar, but you've got to continue your own education.
When you sit down with a compliance consultant or a compliance officer and they go through, I remember in the early days, particularly, they do a training needs analysis. And I think that's really important. At the time, I used to think it was a compliance tick function. But when I sit down myself, I say, okay, look, where do I want to develop? What do I need to know more of? How can I add more value to my clients? And then I look at that as an individual and I say, okay, well, look, myself, my firm, I'm going to go down this route. I'm going to develop, we're going to be more of a specialist in this area. And we had this the beginning of this year, end of last year, when the Rachel Reeves issued all the information about pensions and potentially IHT and stuff. Like, hey, look, we know offshore bonds and we know trusts, but is there more we can know about this? So yeah. I think my skill level is pretty good on it, but my team there. So Poppy, do you really know how to submit and understand the underwriting, this, that, and the other? Let's get some insurance providers in. Let's understand the underwriting. Let's understand that to a greater level. So it's not just your own learning, it's your team's learning as well.
It's doing that due diligence, isn't it? And making sure that you're just on the ball. And you mentioned there about the budget and what Rachel Reeves suggested about pensions coming into the estate. You've also got to read articles, read summaries from providers like, Scottish Widows Tech Talk or, FT Advisor or any of these articles. Do your own research, review the actual material itself, but also you've got to get a well-rounded opinion on it all. And as you always say, some of the rules for this haven't even come in yet.
Yeah.
You're developing your knowledge on a certain subject that you think you know. You can't just read it in 3 minutes and say, now I'm an expert.
But Paul, I'm gonna ring the bell and say you've got to know what your outcome is, though, right? As a planner, you've got to know what what does it look like when it's finished. What do you want the firm to look like? And then bring your learning and your CPD in line with that. So when I go to conferences, I don't go to any active fund management training. I don't go to any esoteric tax planning sessions or anything else. I go to things that support what I want Lexington to be known as. So we hold ourselves up to be.
But it is that strive to continuously improve, not just yourself, but the outcomes for your clients and also what the team knows. Because there's an assumption that some of your team, they just know this stuff. Yeah. They just know it. And this is where having team meetings and discussing it and developing your processes in-house are, super important.
Number 6. Failing to delegate and trying to do it all yourself.
You must have had a go at this previously.
Well, no, 100%. I think when you start a firm, when you start your own practice, so if you're a financial planner who's starting out, you're kind of you wear all the hats, don't you? You wear your compliance and the director hat, you wear your admin hat, and then you wear your planner hat. So you're running all three things. And slowly and gradually you start putting other people in the positions and letting them wear that hat and just like delegating things out. The thing that enabled me to do that very early on was 2 things. One, we well capitalized the firm. So I think one of the biggest mistakes young financial advisors do is they set up their practice and they don't put any capital in it. They just set it up with nothing or a very, very small amount. You wouldn't set up a restaurant or a online trading company or a clothing shop with no working capital. You have your business plan, you capitalize, you've got cash flow there, and then you run the business. So I think that's really, really important.
If you're employed as an advisor, you can do what you said earlier about taking on loads of clients. You're building your client bank. You can afford almost to take on some of the wrong clients. If instead you're running your own limited company, if you're directly regulated or an RI of another firm, but you're trying to build your own brand and your own limited company, you do have to capitalize it and you do have to be more selective. And it's almost like grow it slowly rather than too quickly, because you'll just come a cropper. You write loads of business, the wrong type.
Yeah.
You then have got lots of clients to look after, but you don't have the staff, you don't have the processes or systems. You'll plateau very quickly.
The number of young advisors I meet who come into the business, I talk to them, stuff like that, and they are starting from zero. Basically, they might have 10,000 or 20,000 in the bank or something, and they want to take their salary out and such like, and they're always on the back foot. Whereas if you've got a fully funded company, you've got a cash flow forecast for your firm. So okay, this is the level of income I need to be generating. This is the level of expenses I'm going to have. You can see it. You can see the working capital work.
It's doing your own planning.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to do that. There are a lot of advisors, unfortunately, I think, that might be good planners and good with clients, but they might not be very good at running a business. They might not be very good at delegating and running a team.
Yeah.
And even though they call both of us sole advisor firms, sole practitioners, the reality is there's no way I could do it on my own.
No.
My wife helps Kevin, my power planner, Catherine, my practice manager, and then we've got Thomas, our administrator. And I've got more staff that I want to take on over the next couple of years, because as you develop as a firm, you want to improve the service offering to your clients. You want to work more efficiently. And all of that means delegating the right things to the right people.
Yeah.
We delegate to a marketing firm, to an IT firm, we outsource compliance. You just can't do it all.
No.
and expect to grow and be successful.
But the way you do it, I believe, is to have things documented. So having processes, systems. So when you're giving advice, you have to follow the same process to give advice. You can't just wing it. To scale your business in respect of processes, it's got to be repeatable every single time. So I see my clients pretty much at the same time, same day of the week, consistently, and the agenda we follow is the same one, whether they're a widow or an entrepreneur. It doesn't make much difference. There's a process that we follow, and I'm sure the reports that you generate are the same for every client. They just might be tweaked. The structure ultimately is the same, and I think that's really important. It might be light bulb moment for some young advisors who have come from another firm and worked there and stuff, because whenever I sort of speak to people who come in for interview stuff, I explain how we work, they're like, wow, that's, I interviewed a virtual PA the other day, expecting her to be super organized. And I explained how I operate and how I delegate work and follow up, which is like, oh, wow, that was an alarm bell for me.
Is there anybody more regimented in their working process than you, Warren? Anyone any more organised or structured?
I think Paul Etheridge was, I might say, but
yes.
I like it. It works for me. Go on.
Definitely important. Right. So next one, number 7, hiring too soon or too late.
Yeah.
And this is to do with obviously growing the support of your business and deciding whether to scale it quickly and take on lots of a bigger team before your turnover gets to the point where you can afford it, or waiting until you're overwhelmed with business and then saying, do you know what, I need to hire someone. So how have you coped with this in your firm? Have you done it strategically, or have you sort of just winged it and it's gone okay?
Oh, no, definitely done it strategically. But I think one of the things there's so many mistakes financial advisors make. Well, should I say professionals? It could, generalization for accountants and lawyers too. But one of the mistakes, they don't have a business plan. And then they don't have a business plan, therefore they can't work the plan. So how on earth can you be a financial planner if you don't have a business plan? Your business plan is like a 50-year plan. What's the future of the business? How does it run? What's it going to do?
Yes.
And you then say, okay, well, I'm going to need a salary of 40, 50, whatever, £1,000 for a member of staff down the road. How am I going to achieve that? How am I going to make sure there's capital in the business to fund that cost? And I think a lot of firms just sort of say, okay, well, I'll go along. Oh, I need someone. There's pressure. I think the challenge we have in our profession is recruiting, getting people in and getting them on thing. I think it's a real tough one. I think I probably would hire too soon rather than too late. Yeah, I know it could sound, oh, that's easier for you to say, Warren, it's just going to cost money. And I completely agree. But every single hire we've taken on, I think I can attribute it to a growth in our business. It's every time you take somebody on, you seem to sort of go to that next level, because it frees our time up to do what we're probably best at, is speaking to people, solving problems.
Yeah. We talked earlier about, wearing too many hats and that sort of thing. If you do wait, and I've been there myself, where the business is growing, you're taking on new clients. I've waited too late to take on a new member of staff, a new administrator, and you find that you're burning out a bit because you're working too hard. There's too much to do, and you can't delegate if there's no one there to delegate it to. So you have to have a rethink, and it goes back to exactly what you said about having your own business plan.
Yeah.
I think it's a mistake to start anywhere on any journey without any kind of plan. So, and if you've got one, you need to revise it at least annually to say, am I on track, or what else do I need to do? Where do I want this to go? Do I want to be a firm with 50 members of staff, or am I happy keeping it pretty small? And if so, how does that translate to the number of staff I need, the number of clients that I need? So yeah.
I'm convinced this is a reason. It's not the only reason, but a reason so many financial advisors are selling their firms. I know the multiples and the value we get for them is significant, but it's a great business to be in when you've got, excuse my language, when you've got your shit in order. It's like when okay, well, look, this is the track I'm going on. This is what the future looks like. This is the number of days I'm working, number of weeks I'm working. This is how the growth potential looks, or actually, I'm now at a capacity which I'm happy with. I don't want to take any more clients on because I've just generated the level of income that I need. So
we don't want to give the impression in this podcast that we've never made any mistakes. I mean, obviously I haven't, but you've made lots of them, Warren, over the years.
Yeah.
No, seriously, we've both made lots of mistakes, but it's how you overcome them is the key, and how you sort of work around them.
And I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. I think the mistakes we generally make are when we say yes to things that are outside of if you're a good financial planner, you like to please people, you like to help people. Okay, so you want to, and it's not necessarily just work in respect of products in advice, but it might be, would you speak at this conference? Would you write this article? Would you go and help these people? Does that make sense? And it's sometimes because that takes your time up. You're like, actually, so.
Well, it's fun going to the conferences and the awards ceremonies and all of that. Even if you don't win, you surround yourself with other like-minded people. That's great. Honest to God, I last week I was at 2 conferences in London, and a bit of fun, but I didn't really learn that much, to be fair. And I'm not saying I know it all, but was it worth the effort going into London with the expense of a hotel and all the rest of it to meet a few other advisors and listen to some speeches that I was thinking, well,
all
they were average at best.
Is I invited you to play golf. That's all I can say. You could have been playing golf with me. So
I have heard great speeches at conferences before. That obviously, and this is what you go for. You go to speak to other advisors. It gives you time to think about it, and you just need one good idea, and it's worth it. So I don't want to suggest that the ones last week were a waste of time. They were fun, but
you just didn't learn
I'd rather just. I think I've become a hermit in my old age. I'd rather just stay at home and do a quick Zoom meeting so I can hang up, or a conference where I could let it go in the background and be doing something else, a multitask.
Right.
Okay.
What's next?
Where are we up to? Number 8.
Number 8. Okay. So underestimating inflation and longevity in your planning. And I think we're really referring back our clients' planning here, the effects of inflation on figures and longevity. And I think both of them are massive keys. I'm very lucky. We're an advocate of Truth, Presswood. I think it's a fantastic bit of kit, and it enables us to do changes like that very, very quickly. Extend longevity, play about with inflation. We can show it side by side and such like. And I don't think, unless you're really embracing a cash flow financial planning tool, you're able to, show the effects of these things to clients easily. If you've got a comprehensive spreadsheet or something, then that might be a different matter. But I think with inflation is one thing, and then longevity, dare I say it, and we kind of touched on it earlier, shoehorning everyone into a 100% equity portfolio, but it's underestimating the need for taking equity exposure for me.
To combat, inflation risk. I mean, it's virtually the only asset really that sort of keeps not just track with inflation, but outperforms inflation. So, again, it does go hand in hand. And I would suggest, again, sweeping statement, that the majority of very educated, clever, intelligent clients that you work with can't just mentally do the arithmetic for if they're in their early 50s to understand what the buying power of their money will be in the future and how it will erode. because of inflation. It's very easy to say, I'm working, it's fine, I get a pay rise most years, it's going to be fine. It's completely different when you stop working and you've got this pot of money that's got to last you for the rest of your life. And if you're reasonably fit, and again, with scientific advances and so forth, if it's got to last another 35 or 40 years or more, the pot's bigger than it needs to be bigger than you think. And the level of withdrawal, you need to be very sensible about it, or else you will deplete the buying power of your money. And just, get to the point in the future where you lose dignity and choice because you've run out of money.
I think there's a really good point there, because you sort of said medical advancements and stuff. We kind of make decisions based on the past. We look at the past, okay, people average age 85, this, that, and the other. But with technology advancing so much, and AI and healthcare advancements, really, there's a good chance that you can push that age out even further. And I read multiple times from different sources, they say that you don't have to try and plan to live to age 100. You just kind of plan to live to age 85, because if you get there, they'll have the advancements to get to 90, when they'll have the advancements to get to 95, and they keep sort of pushing things out. And I have clients say, well, I don't want to live that long. Well, that's fine. But if you do, you want to make sure you're financially sound. And kind of goes hand in hand with inflation. Longevity is you might run out of money. That's a bad one. But what's equally as bad is having too much money. Getting to that age and having all these unmissed opportunities and stuff. So be able to show clients within a few clicks that how much extra a client can spend to enjoy their moments, their journey before they get to that age, because it's very reasonable for your spending profile to change. What we're spending today, we're probably not going to be spending the same amount as 65, 75, 85, 95. Our spending profile is going to change. So having a good bit of kit to enable you to show that is going to be worth its weight in gold to a client. You've got a client coming in, they can't do those calculations themselves. It's just not possible.
It's fascinating to me that the balance required and the sort of the impartiality required to assist somebody properly. It's not just about how you invest your money and let's show you the projections. It's helping them make great decisions. And as you mentioned there about if the pot of money is too big and they're already in their 60s, and let's say they don't have much more than 20 years as a best guess, from the client, you're talking about longevity and we're talking about making it last. But it comes down to that classic question of what's the money for? And who are you leaving it for, and are you going to spend it now? Are you going to give it away? I think that the balance there is quite tricky between running out and having too much money when you die. And I think that requires discussion and an updated plan with the client and making sure they're doing what they want to do rather than putting it off. And there's clients that continue to work, and that's fine. If they get joy out of wanting to continue to work and give to society and they've got more to give, and fine, do that. But I've definitely got clients that have got a big pot of money, and it's this balance between getting them to spend it and not and spending it too quickly. It's just a logical discussion that one needs to have based on requirements. And what's happening.
I often find that if they are of a generation where they are savers and have accumulated this money, it's very hard for them to spend it.
I completely agree with that.
20, 30 years of accumulated money is I much prefer to catch a client pre-retirement, so a couple of years before retirement, then well into retirement, because they've got this guaranteed income coming in. You can get them to have a good lifestyle, and then we can carry that on into retirement years. Whereas when they're reliant on their capital pot, unless we buy guaranteed income, it's hard for them to change their path and start becoming spenders rather than savers. Go on.
Absolutely. So, are you going to? Did I do number? Number 9?
You're on number 9.
Right. So, number 9: charging inconsistently or undervaluing your services. So, as any firm, whether you charge fixed fees or percentage fees, ad valorem fees, however you charge, as long as you're consistent in the way that you do it, I think that's totally fine. If you know what your worth is and you say to them, this is what I do for the money, this is where the value is. Tricky because, of course, it's the clients that determine the value, but you need to know openly and honestly, you need to know what you think your niche is, what you think I was just laughing because of the American at this seminar last week calling it a niche. And a certain somebody who I know listens to this would find that amusing. But knowing what you think you're best at and delivering that. and feeling that you're worth every penny of it. So you have to be very, very clear. And since MiFID II came in, you've got to make sure that you can document in both percentage and monetary terms what the costs and fees are. But I think being consistent is incredibly important, because you're just going to come a cropper if you start charging different fees to different clients based on different levels of service.
Yeah.
It's not being TCF, is it?
Yeah.
So you do have to learn how to articulate what your costs and fees are and what you do for it.
And I think if you're a new planner, I think taking a step back and saying, okay, what am I going to do? What is it? So I personally think it's important you charge for your advice, and then you charge separately for your implementation. I think that's how you can be impartial and independent, because that gives the client the choice to say, "Don't worry, that was great. Thanks for the advice. I'm now going to implement it myself." Or, "Hey, there's no implementation. This is what you need to do." And then just make sure that the ongoing fee is sufficient to make your business profitable, because it's no good, charging nothing. You can't charge too much, because obviously it's a competitive market. But there's no point charging such a low level that you're going to go out of business. You can't sustain it, or you're going to have to do so much business yourself that you put yourself out of pocket.
Yeah. Well, I think you can. I did a PFS Power presentation on fees and performance, which I will put a link to that in the show notes for any advisor that wants to watch it. It's about an hour long. But I did it specifically because I felt that from what I'd seen, listening to other advisors, going to conferences, that there wasn't enough discussion. And as someone saying, okay, let's talk about what you actually do, how you talk about costs and fees to a client, how you put it into perspective. The reality is you can't invest money for zero. You can't assume that your advisor will do everything for nothing. There's obviously a cost to it. You're right. You've got to demonstrate the amount of time you're spending on it and the value. It's not about just hourly rates and just fixed fees. If you wanted to do that as a solicitor or an accountant does, that's absolutely fine. There's a lot of hidden costs in our profession, and there's a lot of time taken to produce reports and do research that perhaps clients don't realize either. So when we do a report for a client and I say, look, there's an initial cost, it is this, I will tell them that it takes my power planner about 30 to 35 hours to produce a full written report. It's not something you can just knock up with ChatGPT in 5 minutes and just feed in the information and it spits out a report. There's a lot of thought goes into it, and the client's paying you to think, and they're paying you to give them best advice and to help guide their decision, and to ultimately make sure they don't make poor financial decisions, because even a very, very intelligent person can do that because they're not aware of the options. They're just not aware of them. Why would they be aware of all the options and the pros and cons of each? Yeah. Your job's to articulate that and help the client make a good, smart decision.
100%. Okay, number 10. Before we wrap up, let's look at the time. So forgetting that this is a people business, not just numbers. Wholeheartedly, I think the role of a financial planner has 3 skill sets. You've got to know your technical information, otherwise it's no good. You've got to be organized and efficient with your time, otherwise you'll just get nothing done. But also you've got to make sure it's about the person in front of you, and making sure you're giving them your full attention and making sure that you're thinking of their best interest first and foremost for anything else. It's very easy for us to sort of compare ourselves to accountants and solicitors and stuff like that. But I'll be honest, I think this is the best profession in the world, hands down, without a doubt, because we help people live their best life.
The other thing that I've realized, and I say this completely openly, is that I think our USP as a business at Tandem is 2 core things. It's number 1 is how we make the client feel. We do that by the everything from all the brand that we show them, all of the way that they're greeted, the emails, the presentations, the meetings at my offices and so forth. The second core thing is the trust. It's absolutely about trust, integrity, and service. Those things for us are way more important than just having every qualification, knowing every minute detail. You can have all the best technical knowledge and tell a client what the answers are. It doesn't mean they're going to come on board. It doesn't mean they're going to follow you. I think that we need to be empathetic. We need to be in the moment with the client, be present, be listening, be open, ask them great questions. And I've realized absolutely that my business is not just me. It's my team, my staff, my brand, everything. It's all, but it's also, it's not our money, it's the client's money. I'm so amazed that other firms on growth strategies treat their clients like numbers, and all the business is about assets under management, revenue, turnover, profit. Those things are important, but actually it comes down to look after your client, do what's in their best interest, and make sure that there is trust there, because you're taking this, you're giving, have this huge responsibility to always be available, to be around, to give best advice, and to be open, honest with your clients.
100%. I think that's been good. I think, we've given that a fair bash. And through those 10, I think other ones that have come through as well. So I think if you're a financial planner starting out in business, or you just wanted to have a look, how can I improve? I think that would be a good place to start. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Should we go on to our Q&A, our quotes and anecdotes section?
What have you got for us today then, Paul?
So I've got an anecdote, and I might give a quote, but it depends on what you come back with. So my anecdote this week is about sailing.
Okay.
We did flying a plane last session, didn't we, in episode 15? So this is it. Financial planning is like captaining a sailboat. You can't control the wind or the tides. That's the market, inflation, and life's uncertainties. But you can adjust the sails, read the conditions, and steer the right course. Fail to plan your route, try to handle everything alone without a capable crew, or ignore the storm clouds, and you'll drift off course or end up shipwrecked. The best captains stay calm, trust their navigation, and make small adjustments to stay on track, even when the seas get rough.
I like that. You kind of got like a bedtime story voice.
Well, thank you. I think I feel a bit raspy at the moment for my weekend away. But hopefully you get the point of my little analogy.
No, I like that analogy. Okay, let me give you a quote. The biggest mistake is thinking that you need to have all the answers. Clients don't hire you to know everything. They hire you to know how to find the right answer.
And who is that? Is that ChatGPT for you? Every question they give you, you just plug it in and then feed it back.
Yeah. I was completely guilty of that. I can remember my very first corporate client meeting, and I spent the whole morning revising and understanding corporation tax reliefs, this, that, and the other. And client didn't ask me a single question. And I was like,
wow.
Oh. So, yeah.
Well, I don't want to give 15 quotes like I normally do, so I think we should wrap up there. But I would like to say to any of our listeners, just have a look in the show notes. There are links. We put them on Spotify and YouTube. And if you want to click on anything we've discussed today, hopefully they might be useful. But no, I've enjoyed this one, Warren. I'm hoping that it's of some use to our fellow IFAs out there who are trying to grow their business, or even those that are already running a good business, to just reflect on what they're doing right and perhaps what they need to improve on.
No, I agree. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Well, look, everyone, thanks for joining us and tuning in to the Finance Geeks podcast. That's it for today's session, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks.
See you now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Finance Geeks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. Drop your comments and questions on YouTube, and be sure to follow us on social media. Join us next time for more insights to boost your financial planning game.